I, I'm Heidi Mintzner. I'm a program manager lead on the Global Financials Management team. I do want to make sure everyone realizes this is the financial session because I know there was a room switch. So just make sure you're in the right spot. The solution architecture session is in the ballroom, Thomas Murphy Ballroom. So if you're in the wrong spot, financials, no? I'm here with my coworker, Kevin McGarrian, who's also a principal program manager lead on the Global Financials Management team. And today we're going to spend some time mostly doing demos. So we won't go through too many slides, but we want to highlight some of the new capabilities that you'll see in financials in versions R2 and R3. And we're going to talk through these demos using a day-in-the-life format of the financials department. So you'll see a mix of demonstrations through collections and general ledger, procure-to-pay throughout the session. And disclaimer, I'm sure you've seen this before if you've been in other sessions, but because R3 is not yet released, we have this disclaimer for your review. And just the agenda today, we're going to talk a little bit about some of the pains and challenges that are faced by the financials department. How many of you actually sit in the financials department in your organization? Great. We're going to spend a lot of time doing product demos, and then at the end we'll wrap it up with highlighting the new capabilities that you'll see in R2 and R3 for financials, most of which you'll have the opportunity to see in more detail in other concurrent sessions that are happening throughout the conference. So just to highlight some of the pains and challenges that hopefully our demos will cover to alleviate. When we think of, we give our personas names in the organization, so that helps us identify with those individuals as we're working on features. So we have Sarah, who is our Chief Financial Officer. Some of the pains that she faces is wanting additional business insights, always looking for more information. How can I get that information in a more efficient manner? Enforcing corporate policies, of course, is a key concern. Similarly, the controller has to react to those requests for information as well, typically in control of the budget, making sure that budget is enforced. And again, constantly looking for ways to improve efficiency and accuracy of financial reporting. And Phyllis, the accounting manager, she often deals with errors, correcting errors. How can we be more efficient in preventing those errors from occurring from a data entry perspective? We'll take a look at some of that. Cassie, who's our auditor, of course, more than just this pain point here, but definitely interested in definition of internal controls and enforcement of corporate policies. And then we have our budget manager analyst. Again, pain points there around flexibility in defining budgets, making adjustments to budgets, making sure individuals that participate in the budget or need to participate in that budget process are actively engaged. Our accounts receivable and accounts payable clerk, of course, they would like to reduce the number of discrepancies in the system. Efficient way of recording information in the system to prevent those data entry errors that could happen. And then Connie, our collections manager, will spend a lot of time focusing on some of the pains and challenges you see here from a collections manager perspective is getting access to the information when you're dealing with your customers that might be in the collection situation. How do you record those activities? How do you capture the documentation related to those collection cases? So we're going to do two demos, and I'm going to set up the demos. Both of them kind of start in the same place. We're going to take a look at how the CFO is looking and reviewing information related to key business metrics and the performance of the organization. And that's going to spin off two different flows. The first one is related to looking at information for travel-related expenses, wanting more information on expense purposes, and how the accounting manager can add additional dimensions into the system to capture that information so that we can later do analysis on it. How the controller prevents the overspending of budget for travel-related expenses utilizing budget control. and then how the accounts payable clerk can now allocate travel expenses across departments. And more specifically, we'll look at a new dimension for expense purpose. And then lastly, how the controller is able to review those travel-related expenses at the desired level and see where the cause or the categorization of those travel-related expenses. The second demo flow, again, it starts the same with the CFO reviewing key business metrics. This one is a collections-related scenario. So the CFO is reviewing accounts receivable balance and aged balance and notices a large overdue balance. So ask the accounting manager to please take a look at this. I want to understand what's going on. Then the collection agent reviews the customer information and case activity. Obviously, there's ongoing discussion with the customer for a large overdue balance and how that overdue balance is resolved within the system. In this case, we're saying a check was in the mail. We might have another method of resolving that collections activity as we go through the demonstration. So this one will be focused on collections. So I am going to switch machines. Okay, so the first part of both flows is the CFO reviewing and looking at information. Has anyone had a chance to see Business Analyzer yet or download it from the Microsoft Store? Great, a few of you. So Business Analyzer is a Windows 8 application that is available from the Microsoft Store. It does allow for the CFO and or controller to get information while they're, no matter where they are on the go. It's making use of the OLAP cubes in Dynamics AX and surfacing those KPIs and charts related to those key performance metrics. So here on the screen, you can see I have my month-to-date expenses. I have my current ratio, days sales outstanding. I have some additional charts. I can continue scrolling. I have KPIs that I can see the goal and trend information. Additionally, I can surface all of my management reporter reports in Business Analyzer so that I can not only get the quick glance of information, but if I want to look at the detail of a report, I can also view that as well through the Management Reporter web viewer. I'm just going to drill down into some of this information so we can see how the business is performing. So for instance, this month-to-date expenses. If I select that, I have the option of changing the view, a default to a pie chart. If I want to look at that as a funnel, probably more applicable for sales. If I want to look at the data in a grid, I can do that as well. I can drill in to see trends. So here we have budget versus actual. I'm going to look at the budget information. And now I can see departmental information as well, or excuse me, categorization, account categorization. So if I want to look at travel and entertainment expenses, I can see that in this case we're consistently over budget with travel-related expenses. I want to understand how we're spending this money in a more granular way and maybe enforce some controls to prevent this from happening. So I can see that type of analysis. I, again, can change my chart view depending on how I want to look at the data. And again, I can see the raw numbers as well. If I go back, and the other piece of information I'm interested in is, the accounts receivable balance. I see that it's quite high. So here we specifically have a large overdue balance. I'm going to start, a link conversation with my accounting manager to understand what's going on with this overdue balance. So when I select link, it'll open up the link. I'm not logged in, but now I can see the information and I can start a link conversation with someone in my organization to get more details. If I want to just show financial information, for instance, there are these filters, so I can switch my view to I just want to see financials, or I just want to see sales. If I want to add specific charts, I can do that as well, so I can customize which charts are shown or not shown. So in this case, they're all shown, but if I wanted to remove one, perhaps net sales, that will be refreshed and the chart's removed. So you have that same capability with KPIs as well, so you can add and remove KPIs that are relevant for my purposes. So again, that's a little bit about Business Analyzer and allowing me to see information when I need to. We looked at both the month-to-date expenses. I'm going to follow up with accounting on that, accounting manager, and additionally the open accounts receivable balance. So now, as you know, the controller, I want to get that additional level of analysis available to my CFO. So I'm going to do that by adding an additional financial dimension, but before I do so, I'm just going to take a look or open up the ledger here in the account structure so you can see the current dimensions that are included as part of the chart of account structure. So currently I just have main account, business unit, and department as the levels that I'm tracking, and this is across all my P&L accounts. So I've gone ahead and added a new dimension called expense purpose. And I do want to add that expense purpose, but only for a specific range of accounts. I don't need to capture that on every transaction, but only when it's related to my travel expense main accounts. Just to show you the financial dimension I created, it's very simple. It's called expense purpose. The financial dimension values that I have for this are the types of events and travel that individuals within my organization typically perform. So now I'll be able to get this additional level of detail when I'm looking at travel-related expenses. Just to call out while this form is open, there is the ability to translate these dimension names and descriptions. So if you're sharing these across organizations where you need to change the language for a company located in France, for instance, you can now enter in translated text for the dimension values as well as main accounts. So I've added this dimension, but now I want to use it for just my travel-related expenses. I'm going to go back to my account structure. I could add an additional dimension here for the expense purpose that would show for anytime I'm entering a transaction for my P&L accounts and just allow blank values. But instead, because that would surface every time I'm entering a transaction, I want to limit which accounts that I'll be prompted for that additional dimension to be provided. And I can do that through an advanced rule. So I'm just going to edit this chart of accounts and go into the advanced rule and create a new rule. I'm going to choose a filter for when I want this rule applied. And so I can add an account range. So in this case, I only want this rule applied when my main account is between and includes, these are my travel-related expenses. So I'm just entering in the account numbers for that account range. And then I'm going to create an advanced, the structure that I want applied. So in this case, I'm going to create a rule structure and then apply it to the rule. And in this case, I'm only going to add that one segment that I just created. You could have multiple dimensions in here. In my case, my example, I'm just adding one additional segment. So I'll activate that advanced rule. And then I'll assign that advanced rule here. And now that rule will be applied for this account range. So I'll close this, and then I do need to reactivate my chart of accounts when I make that change. So again, now when I'm entering in transactions, my main account is within that account range, 601,500 to 601,509. I'll see that additional dimension, and the values that will be displayed are those dimension values that I just I displayed for like annual conference, customer visit, etc. The other thing that I want to do once my account structure is activated is I want to enable budget control as well. We are increasing, as we saw in the information in Business Analyzer, we're continuously going over budget for our travel-related expenses, so I can take some preventive measure to prevent that from happening, and by using budget control. And so I already have this set up and enabled, but just to highlight some of the capabilities that you have here is you can determine which dimensions that are part of your account structure do you want to perform a budget check against. And you can see I have all of them selected that were in my actual account structure, which was main account, business unit, and department. I can also specify for which combination of main accounts or dimensions do I want a check applied. For instance, I might not want to check budget on every single expense account. I may only want to restrict it to entertainment and travel, the things that where budget may be abused. So I can see under my budget control rules that I have 3 of them defined here. I have one related to selling expense, so that's including my account range for my selling expenses. I have one for training, and I created one or added one for travel. So using that same kind of filter criteria as I had on the advanced rule, I've applied it here for a budget control rule as well. So whenever a transaction is entered that utilizes that account range, a budget check would be performed, and it will be performed at the level of main account, business unit, and department, as those are the dimensions I specified I wanted to enable a budget check. So the documents that this is available on are through the procurement process, so purchase requisition, purchase order, invoice, vendor invoice, also travel-related expenses, so your expense reports, and then all of the general journals, like the general journals, the vendor invoice journals, pretty much anywhere where you would typically enter in expense transactions. Budget control can be enforced, and you can make the selection of those which documents you want to enable. So it's not an all or nothing. You can specify, I only want to do this check on travel requisitions, for instance. And then the last part I'll highlight in here is related to how the budget check is performed. So you can have great flexibility here in determining the amounts that are included for a budget check. So you're defining the calculation that you want to occur. Do you want to include all of your budget amounts or just your original budget? Do you want to include unposted or reservations for encumbrance? Those would be related to purchase orders that are open in the system. Do you want those amounts to be included in the budget check? So by turning those options on or off, your calculation will redisplay at the bottom of the form, and then that's the calculation that would be applied when the budget check is occurring. Sure. The question was, is budget control only enabled for dimensions? Yes, so it's specific to the account structure that you have in use for your ledger. So in my case, I had 2 different account structures. One of them had main account, business unit, department. I believe the other one is just main account and business unit. So I had the ability to pick any one of those 3 dimensions because those are what are available for my enabled in my chart of accounts for my ledger. If we could hold questions to the end, that would be great. I'm sorry. We'll leave time for it. Okay, so now that I have that enabled, let's just show this in use. And before I do that, I'm going to open up an inquiry just to show you my current standing for my budget amount. So here I just am picking my travel expense for a particular business unit for my sales department, and just to show you what my available budget looks like right now. As we go through, we'll see how this is impacted as we enter a PO and vendor invoice. So I've entered quarterly budget amounts, and so all of that budget is currently available. I don't have any reservations of budget against this particular combination. I also have the ability to do a second level budget check at a department level, in this case, is what I've specified. So I could also look at the aggregate budget across that department dimension also. But I'm going to enter a PO, and this is related to travel. We're going to enter a PO to reserve a block of hotel rooms for an upcoming event, and then we'll take a look at how that budget check occurs. We'll be able to see the additional dimension being added as well or being requested. So I'm just selecting my vendor, and then I'll create a line. And in this case, we'll enter a line for a procurement category versus an item. And we're reserving, 10 hotel rooms, and we got a deal of $100 each. Just some things to call out here. If I go down into the line details, and we're going to scroll, I'm going into the financial dimensions area here. Okay, let me expand this. The mouse doesn't want to behave. Here I can see I have some information defaulting, such as the business unit that may have come from the vendor as well, or record. If I want to, I can apply a distribution template, and this will determine how this line amount is going to be allocated across different dimensions. And I happen to create one that did a 50-50 split across my two different business units. And so when I apply that, we'll see that how this template is then later used on the accounting distributions. So that's a way that we can minimize the potential coding errors. If we have templates, we can apply them, and then it would be defaulted into the accounting distributions. So let's take a look at those. So here I have my travel expense account that's coming in from my posting setup for my procurement category, and I have the 50-50 split across those different business units. And now I can enter in the additional values. I could have entered those as on the line details as well to populate each of the additional values. So let's pick my department, and then here's my final segment based on my account number. Now in that advanced rule that I have defined, I'm now being prompted for that expense purpose. So I'll choose annual conference. And then the same for the second distribution. You can see that I had to fully distribute those amounts. I had an error indicator. So now that's been resolved. So when I close this, we can also perform a budget check. It could automatically happen based on our configuration, but I'm just going to perform one on demand. And here we can see the budget check is occurring, and we have just a warning message here. Excuse me. Didn't mean to do that. We have just a warning message here indicating that the transaction will exceed the budget funds available for this particular combination. And I can see, but it's just a warning. So I can see additional details related to this by looking at the budget check errors or warnings. And what I'm seeing here is that we're over budget for this combination, but we have budget at that budget group level. So based on my configuration, I can consume budget from the all-up sales department, even if that specific combination has exceeded. So that's just a preference, a control you can specify. I could configure it to stop at this level as well, because that combination does not have budget available. So I'm just going to confirm this, and then we'll take a look at the invoice. But before invoicing against this purchase order, we'll take a look at that statistics form again and just see the impact that this transaction had against budget. And again, at confirmation time, a budget check is occurring, so I'm seeing that same message again. Again, it's just a warning based on my configuration. So I'm going to go back into the budget area and just pull up that budget control statistics. I'm going to look at that same account combination. And now I can see that I have $500 reserved. Let me expand the screen here so you can see that. Because I had split this distribution across two different business units, 500 was allocated to this combination. If I change this to the other business unit, we'll see 500 was allocated to that particular combination as well. And if I look at the budget group all up, we'll see that same budget reservation for encumbrance. So you can look at the information in different ways. So now as I invoice, some time's gone by and I've received the invoice, this will relieve this budget reservation for encumbrance, and then it will be a budget reservation, or it's just actuals at that point consuming the budget. I'll close that. So I'm going to go into create a vendor invoice against this. And some of the new capability that was added in AX 2012 was related to two-way matching. So lots of organizations are use three-way matching when goods are involved or inventory is involved, but we also had requests for two-way match as well for service organizations. So just to highlight that that capability is available and can be configured as part of the accounts payable parameters to specify the rules or thresholds for two-way matching as well. So I'm just creating an invoice, and then I'm going to assign or select, that purchase order that I just entered. And as this purchase order is associated to the invoice, I'm also going to get the message related to the budget check, because again, at this point in time, the budget check is happening. It's relieving that encumbrance for the PO and checking it against the actual. So I'm seeing the same exact message I got before, because that combination did not have enough budget, but the all-up sales department did. And in this case, when I get the invoice, I'm going to assume the invoice said that it was actually a $95 per night we got a deal. I'm guessing that doesn't happen too often, that the price is lower. But just to see the impact that this has against those distributions that were created. So what happens in this case is we have our original amount or extended amount of $1,000, and I made a price adjustment when I entered the invoice, and now it's captured as a separate price variance, and the distributions for that price variance are split at the same percentage or amount that the original line was split. So I'm just going to post this vendor invoice, and we'll take one last look at the budget control statistics just to see how that was updated after this invoice is posted, and then I'll wrap it up with some additional analysis we can do in Management Reporter based on those that new financial dimension of expense purpose that we created. Again, back in the control statistics, choose my budget cycle. Oops, not that account. So here's my combination, and now we can see the total actual expenditures has been updated at $475 because that was the amount allocated to this combination on the vendor invoice. And my budget reservations for encumbrance is 0 because it's been relieved. And I can drill down to see more information related to that as well. So we had an original reservation, and then the relieving transaction was that vendor invoice that came in. So just to get some additional analysis and control related to budget, to prevent those situations from occurring, like that chart we were seeing at the beginning with actuals far exceeding the budget. And to look at this information, do any of you use or plan to use Management Reporter? Just a few. So I encourage you to take a look at some of the sessions on Management Reporter during Convergence. There's many of them, so hopefully to learn more in depth about the solution. But just to highlight a report that I created for expense purpose analysis, I'm just going to open the report so you can see it. It's only going to have one transaction in it because I've only just posted one transaction using that new dimension. But I can create a reporting tree based off of all those financial dimensions. So I could see a summary, which is what we're seeing here across all units, across all of my expense purposes. And then as I start to use that financial dimension value in the system, I only used annual conference so far, but I had a list of 5. You'd be able to drill into the different financial dimensions to do that analysis. So as the dimension values are used, they would be populated in Management Reporter. So then I can drill down to see more details related to the transactions that were entered or the combination that was entered. And here I see that split between the two business units, but it just gives me another way to analyze the information. Additionally, I can do the same with that budget versus actuals. I have this budget versus actuals report, kind of mimics that inquiry screen that we saw, only I'm not having, I just have reservations instead of the specific types of reservations like encumbrance and pre-encumbrance, but I have my actuals, my budget reservations, my original budget, and my budget available, and I can drill down to see more information. And again, there's the distribution split across those two different business units. So it just gives you a kind of quick glance at the types of reports that you can create in Management Reporter and get that additional insight. So next, I'll turn it over to Kevin, who's going to, that second demo flow, again, the CFO was looking at Business Analyzer and analyzing accounts receivable, and now Kevin's going to play the role of the collections manager and dealing with those overdue amounts. Which one do you need me to switch this to?
4. Right, great, thanks Heidi. Good morning, everyone. As Heidi talked about a little bit earlier in the presentation, she mentioned these personas that we utilize within inside of the development organization. And one of them that she mentioned specifically around collections was Connie. And Connie is the individual that typically we refer to that collects funds in the organization. Do we have any Connies at all in the room today? No Connies. Okay, I guess I'll be the only one that will be the Connie here today. But obviously, in all organizations, it's really important to basically retrieve cash from your customers as quickly as possible in order to maintain a healthy cash flow within inside of your organization. So what I'm going to be doing is actually taking you through kind of the life of the collector. I'll make a command decision this morning since I'm, instead of playing the role of Connie, I'll play the role of Kevin, the collector. And Kevin comes in for his job on a daily basis and looks at a number of different options that he's got within inside of collections. So you can see that we've got a collections grouping here, and the first one is a collections list page. The second one is a number of collection cases that we may have open. And then the third one is a number of collection activities. Those activities would be things that I may have assigned to me that I need to go ahead and take action on. But I'm going to go ahead and start on the collections list page. Now, what this list page enables me to do is it basically gives me a quick view of all of the customers that I'm assigned to within inside of the organization, and just a quick glance of things such as what their balance due is. And then you'll notice that I've got a indicator here next to my aging amounts that basically tells me whether or not they're in good standing, or whether or not they're kind of on the edge, or whether or not they're in bad standing with the company. So I also have the ability within inside of this specific form to be able to view information in regards to the fact boxes. So off here on the right-hand side, you'll see for the first customer, I've got their address information, contact information, things about their credit limit, what their amount due balance is, and their credit available. And as I scroll through each of the customers in this list page, you'll see that information updates for me automatically. I also have the ability to sort within inside of this window, or within inside of this form. I can click on any column heading here, such as amount due balance. It sorts all of the information for me by amount due balance. I can choose my aging buckets as well. So if I want to look at everyone who's 30 days past due, I can go ahead and select to sort on that column. I've got all of the filtering capabilities also that you'd have on a standard list page as well. So if I wanted to filter, say, on family, when I do that, it will pull back Family Entertainment Center. I can also select to filter yet another way, and that's going to be to filter by grid. So let's say that I'm talking to a customer on the phone, and they happen to say, I've got a $51,000 balance that's due, and I'd like you to pull up some more information on that. I could go ahead and enter in $51,000 in the amount due column. And in here, I've got lots of different filter criteria here, but I want mine to be set to exactly is $51,000, and then it pulls back the satin finish company. So I can kind of validate with this individual, their address information, company name, who the contact is, and so forth. And then give them a little bit more information about their specific document. The other thing that you can do, I'm going to go ahead and go back, take that filter off. So you'll notice that I'm viewing a pool that says all customers. So as the only collector inside of my organization, I'm responsible for collecting for all of the individual customers. And my organization's actually been growing quite rapidly. So we're actually in need to actually add another collector to our company. So what I'm going to do is I want to actually go in and I'm going to be responsible now for all of my customers that begin with A through M. And in order to do that, I'm going to go in and actually create a new pool that basically shows me all of the customers that are A through M. So we will go back and take a look at the customer pools. Inside of here, you can see, just for time's sake, I've created a couple of them in advance. So I've got one here that's A through M, and you can see that I'm actually filtering on customers where the name begins with A and goes through M, and then also where the amount due balance is greater than 0. Because as a collector, it probably doesn't make a whole lot of sense for me to be looking at those clients that actually don't have a balance. So I can build that in. And then I've got another one in here for N through Z for the other collector. But I'm going to go ahead and assign this specific pool to myself. Now, typically you'd have, it might be your collections manager who's in actually doing these assignments, but I'm going to go ahead and add this collection pool to myself. I'm playing the role of Kevin Cook. And we'll go ahead and add in A through M. And then you'll notice I've got a checkbox over here. I'm going to go ahead and mark that as my default pool. Now, I could actually remove the all customers view from myself as a collector, but because we've got a new collector on staff, there may be situations where they might need some of my assistance since I've got a little bit more experience in the system. And that way, if I've got a pool set up to view all customers, I can help them out with their customers as well as look at my customers at the same time. The other thing I wanted to point out is the aging period definitions. You had seen those indicators in regards to whether or not a customer is past due or not. Those are all custom configurable as well. So you can see for any customers that are not due or current, I'm actually using a green check mark. And I could change that to a green circle as an example. So all of these are custom configurable for you. I've got, obviously, a yellow triangle for 30 days past due, for 60 days, an exclamation point, and so forth. So now what I'm going to do is we're going to go ahead and take a look at that collections list page. This time when I entered the list page, notice what happened. It filtered based off of that new pool assignment that I have. So you can see it says pool A-M. And now I'm only seeing information for customers that I'm currently assigned to. Again, the other thing I can do here is I'm going to filter on this account due balance again. Let's turn that off. And you can see I've got a balance out here for $2 for one of the customers that I'm responsible for. Now, $2 isn't probably worth my time to try and collect from that specific customer. So I'm going to go in and we'll take a look at this specific entry. And we can see that this is the detail form. So this is where typically I'm, if I'm interacting with an individual customer, this is the form that I would typically be on as I'm talking with that customer. Why? Because I've got a lot of information specifically about them, everything from address, contact, phone number, all of their aging period balances, and so forth. And here we can see that I've got a $10,000 invoice that was entered for them, and it looks like they would have rendered payment for all of it but $2. So I'm going to go ahead and just select to waive this or write off this specific $2 balance. And that's as simple as just clicking on write off. I've got reason codes that I can assign to it. I'm defaulting into write off. I'll choose OK. And what the system will do is it'll go ahead and generate that entry for me, and it will be ready to be posted with inside of a general journal. Notice what also happened. At the bottom of the screen, you'll see a list of activities. These are the collection activities that have taken place for this specific customer. Now, I didn't have any listed there before I actually did that write-off. And you'll see that when I actually created the write-off, a collection activity was automatically added for me that shows that I actually wrote off that specific balance for the customer. The other thing that we're going to take a look at, so let's go back to our list page, is Heidi had kind of set up the demo. She talked about the CFO was looking at some of the large balances that were outstanding. So what I'm going to do is go ahead and resort my list by the amount due balance. And aha, I can see a really large balance that's out here that looks like it's past due for global sporting goods. And it looks like it's for just over $1.5 million in the 120 days past due bucket. So what I'm going to do is go ahead and select to drill into some of the detail here for this customer. And inside of here, you can see I've got all of the information about this customer. So you can see all of the open documents that I've got, as well as all of the interactions from a collection activities perspective. I also have the ability to build what's called cases inside of collections. And what the cases allow me to do is actually add documents, as well as track all of the correspondences that I've had back and forth with the customer as part of that case. So I've already got one created here. So I'm going to go ahead and choose global sporting goods. And when I do that, the list filters down to everything that I'm working on with this specific customer. So you can see I've got those two documents that are past due. One of them is that original free text invoice for $1,500,000, as well as it looks like there's some finance charges on their interest calculations of $30,000. Now I can take a look at some of the history that's taken place with this customer. So I've got the first one here where we just sent a collection notice. The second one where we basically got a hold of the customer, and they said that they were billed the incorrect amount. So they said that they were actually quoted a price of $1.2 million, and we billed them for $1.5. So then a little bit further down the road here, we can see that we initiated a phone call with the customer to find out the status of the missing quote. They said that they were going to email it to us. We haven't gotten it yet. So we followed up with the customer, and they said they're unable to find it at present and that they're looking for it. So we went ahead and created an activity to basically follow up with them if they don't render the quote in a suitable amount of time, to basically tell them that they'll need to render full payment. But we can see here just before that scheduled activity that I created that it looks like that the customer actually emailed in a quote to us. And they not only emailed it in, we actually have attached it to this activity. So I can actually drill in. And what I'll be able to do here is actually take a look at that quote. So here I can see, who the specific, salesperson was that they worked with. This is, one in this scenario that would probably have written out by hand and given to the customer. But you can see that it does back up the fact that they had management consulting services for $1.2 million is what they should have been billed. So we'll go ahead and close that up. So now that we know that that the customer indeed should have been charged that $1.2 million, we need to go and fix that for them. So what we're going to do is we're going to go back to our invoice. And let's search for our customer here. And we'll search by name. It looks like here's our invoice. We'll open that up. So here we can see the invoice for $1.5 million. So we're going to go ahead and initiate a correction. And we're going to enter in a reason code of just an error in data entry. And then we will create the corrected invoice. Now the system is smart enough to recognize the fact that we actually calculated interest on this invoice. So what it's asking me is do I want to go ahead and back that out? So I'm going to go ahead and say OK. And now what I'll do is we'll go through and correct that. We'll make that 1.2. And then the other thing I probably want to do is I'll update their due date. And let's bump that out to, let's say, the end of March. And now we'll go ahead and we'll post this entry. And now as the system is posting here, it's not only posting that correction to the invoice itself, what it's also doing is it's adjusting out that interest calculation. There we go. We'll close that up. So now what we're going to do is we'll go back to the collections list page itself. We'll take a look at global sporting goods. And now what do you notice? Now you notice that the interest calculation is now gone from this specific view. And you'll see that that invoice has now been corrected to $1.2 million with a green check mark, meaning that it's in good status with us. So the next thing I'm going to do is, now that we've gone ahead and we have corrected this invoice, it's probably a good idea if I have some additional communication with the customer and actually email them out a new statement. So what I'm going to select to do here is I'll click on my Destinations button. What this will do is it'll bring up some new capabilities that we've got from an emailing standpoint that we built into AX. And basically, what this enables me to do is I can go through, and on the to line here, you'll notice that I've got customer purpose, I've got customer primary contact, I've got worker title, and then some additional email addresses that I can add. So basically, what this enables me to do is, if you think about it from the standpoint, if I were printing in batch, is an example, so meaning I were printing out a range of statements for all of my customers, what I could do is I could select which contact to actually send those emailed statements to. So I could use the customer purpose addresses, or what I could just use is the customer primary contact, which is what I'm going to use in this example. So basically, the customer contact that's been marked as primary for global sporting goods will be the one that will actually receive this email. The other thing that we've got the ability to do is we can select by worker title. So here, if I chose to actually send a copy to maybe my credit and collections manager itself, I could go ahead and do that. Now, anyone that has a worker title of credit and collections manager would receive this email. So if I've got two of them, they're both going to get it. If I don't want both of them to get it, and I only want potentially maybe my manager, then I also have the ability to basically unmark that, and I can just enter in email addresses directly on this form as well. So I can just enter in my managers. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and we'll email this document. This is always a little bit of a risk because this is actually going to go to my live email account. So what we'll do is I'll go ahead and I'll pull up my Outlook in just a moment here as this sends. There we go. So we'll go to my Outlook. And there it is. Just showed up. So we will open that up. It's kind of small. Let's see if this helps. So you can see I've got the customer email statement that's been emailed to me. On here, I'm able to see right in here, the $1.5 million invoice that was out there that was reversed. I've got the new one in here of $1.2 million, and you can see the reversal of the interest charges on here as well. So the last thing I wanted to point out is, Heidi talked a little bit about Management Reporter and how Management Reporter has got, capabilities to be able to do, great financial reporting. Also, Management Reporter has got the ability to help us analyze some of our accounts receivable balances. So I'm going to go ahead and take a look at Management Reporter. And with inside of here, I've got a report that's been created, which is basically my AR balances analysis. And inside of here, I'm able to actually drill into these specific amounts to see the actual detail behind them, all with inside of Management Reporter. So you'll notice that I'm not only seeing the general ledger balances, I can see the customer information all within inside of this Management Reporter report. The other thing that I've got the ability to do, let me just back up one here, is what I can do is if I want to look at the detail inside of Microsoft Dynamics AX, you'll see it. Notice I've got a little kind of caret in the top left-hand corner. That opens up an option for me to open up the information in Microsoft Dynamics. When I click on that, what that will do is it will go ahead and open up an inquiry right within inside of Dynamics and populate it with all of the information that I need that makes up this specific balance. So we'll go in, and here it is. Kind of behind the scenes is pulled up all of the information that made up that balance within inside of Management Reporter. So you can see Management Reporter becomes a very powerful tool in being able to analyze, not just your GL data, but you can look at, you can further analyze your accounts receivable data and actually pull in some of the information, such as customer, from within inside of accounts receivable. So now what I'm going to do is actually spend just a couple of minutes here kind of recapping some of the things that you actually had seen here today. So the first one is in regards to Business Analyzer. So Heidi did a great job of demoing Business Analyzer, talking about some of the powerful capabilities that you've got within that to be able to really slice and dice your data within inside of Business Analyzer. Providing all of those different options to be able to look at your data differently within inside of Business Analyzer, being able to host reports such as Management Reporter up inside of Business Analyzer, and then providing all of the different kind of, I'll call them drill arounds within inside of Business Analyzer. Management Reporter. Management Reporter does have the ability now to view reports and any accounting or reporting currency. And it's just a little toggle that you've got within inside of Management Reporter now. Also, we do support all languages that Microsoft Dynamics AX supports. We had a gap of, I think it was around 6 languages that we had just closed those recently. And then there are a number of default report templates that ship out of the box. I think at last count, somewhere between 14 to 16 default reports that we ship with out of the box. And that utilizes that account category information that you set up with inside of General Ledger to be able to populate all of that data with inside of Management Reporter. And then also, Heidi touched on this a bit too. It does have support for side-by-side reports. General Ledger, we do have an option inside of Ledger. Heidi was in there just for a moment. Inside of Ledger, there's an option that gives you the ability to basically mark a dimension as being balancing. So for example, if you've got business unit that you want to balance on within inside of your organization, why would you do that? You might do that if you want to be able to print out a balance sheet by business unit. You want it to be balanced. So you'd go in and actually create a balancing dimension. You do that on Ledger. You'd specify that business unit as the balancing dimension. And then what would happen is anytime you're transacting between business units, the system will automatically create the do-tos and do-froms for you automatically to give you that ability to print out that balanced balance sheet. We've also got the ability to translate the main account and the dimension values. It's a end-user experience to be able to do that. You just go in and you pull up the main account, and there's a translation option. You click on that, you define your language and what that translation is. Very, very easy to do. We do have fixed dimension support. That's built into AX 2012 as well. And then lastly there were a number of trial balance list page enhancements that we built in that give you the ability to do things such as right from that trial balance list page, you can actually drill in on the summary amounts to see the detail. Also what we did to really make it easier for all of you to integrate with Excel is when you look at the account string, say main account, business unit, department, inside of the list page view previously, all of that was listed together as one string. When you'd send it out to Excel, it made it pretty difficult to be able to slice and dice that information or create a pivot table off of it. So what we did is we added an option on that trial balance list page that gives you the ability to split those out into separate columns. So it'll make your analysis with inside of Excel much easier to do. In the area of accounts payable, we've got the number of SEPA enhancements. So SEPA is that single European payment area. So for any of you that are actually working with vendors overseas over in Europe and making electronic payments, you'll need to make sure that you support SEPA. The beauty is that with AX, we actually do support SEPA. We started that implementation actually probably about 15 to 16 months ago. So we've been working on it for quite a while to make sure that we were ready to support SEPA on day one. So SEPA, obviously, on the AP side would be related to the credit transfers. Also, we made some prepayment enhancements that allow you to include the taxes and miscellaneous charges in those prepayment amounts, as well as some settlement enhancements. And we had just kind of an overall set of performance enhancements that went into accounts payable around reporting, aging, and posting. On the budgeting side, Heidi covered some of this as well, or talked about some of this, but we do have the ability now to basically budget at a group level, as well as at a dimension level that you classify as a total. And there is a wizard in there that we've added that gives you the ability to generate those budget templates. And also what's new is if you've got allocation logic that you've created with inside of General Ledger, you can utilize that allocation logic now with inside of budgeting. In the area of cash and bank management, we've got electronic bank reconciliation and then positive pay. How many of you use positive pay? Pretty good number, yeah. So what we found is that there were, most customers, especially in the United States, had a need for positive pay. It was something that, previously there were a number of third-party solutions that would support it. We've got that out of the box now with Dynamics AX. In the area of fixed assets, if you've got any customers or any divisions that are in Japan, we've got a number of additional depreciation methods. We did add in the ability now that as you've got miscellaneous charges on a fixed assets that you're acquiring, those miscellaneous charges will be brought into the overall acquisition price of that asset. And then we've got some performance enhancements that we made in fixed assets around batch processing, where we batch process enabled the acquisition and depreciation proposals. On accounts receivable, we also have got SEPA enhancements that we had built in there as well. So instead of credit transfers, it's direct debits on the accounts receivable side of the house. And we also built in a couple of additional capabilities here around pre-notes and mandates. Mandates is basically that authorization that you get from the customer to be able to pull money out of their account. And then the pre-notifications is basically that specified amount of time that you need to have in order to notify the customer before you pull money out of their account. And what we found as part of the implementation is that varies by country, so it's configurable within inside of the system. And then we talked a little bit about the batch emailing capabilities. And with the batch emailing capabilities, that's actually for any document that print management supports. So things such as your customer statements, your invoices, and so forth. Any of those documents that you typically would print in batch, that way you can now send out to emails using all of your existing contacts. And then on the accounting framework side, we've got the ability, previously inside Management Reporter, all of your dimensions showed up in alphabetical order. Now what we did inside of AX is we've got the ability to define the order that you want those dimensions to appear with inside of Management Reporter. We also have the ability, this is one of my favorites, is the ability to actually filter suspended dimension values out of that segmented entry control or that account entry control. So previously what would happen is you may have a number of dimensions that you're using inside of your organization as a shared chart of accounts. And maybe one of those values isn't relevant to a specific company. Well, previously you could go through and do a filter on that company and say that this value, I'm going to suspend it for this company. It would still show up in the lookups, although you get an error message when you selected it. So what we've done now is we built an additional logic that not just gives you that error message, it will remove it from that lookup for you. And then lastly here is we eliminated something of what we call dual voucher. 2 vouchers that are being created when posting a product receipt. Eliminated that, collapsed it down to 1, and then summarized a lot of the entries that post onto GL, which eliminates a lot of the noise that we were seeing with inside of GL. So with that, I think we are right at about the top of the hour here at noon. Heidi did say that we would allocate some time for questions. So first off, what I'd like to do is thank everyone for your time and attention today and attending our session. And Heidi and I will stick around and help answer any questions that you may have. Okay, thank you.